Everyone, welcome back to the Clueless Dad. Today we're going to be putting together a shelving unit from IKEA again. Yes, these are always fun. So this is a BROR shelving unit. That's basically a metal one, relatively inexpensive. This particular one is the triple unit, so it's basically 3 sets of shelves connected, and it's in total 2.54 meters, which is about, I don't know, what is that, 8-9 feet, and it's 190 tall, so that's like 6.5 feet almost. So pretty tall, pretty wide, should be pretty strong because it's metal. This space is the back room of my office, and we want to organize it and move all the storage stuff into the shelves so we can use some of the other space for a studio. So this is actually going to be part of my ongoing series of turning this storage room into a YouTube studio. So definitely check out the other videos in that series if you haven't already. So let's get started on the assembly. So first of all, what do you get when you order this? Well, this is what they delivered to us. So basically you have 3 long units, and those are basically the vertical supports and some of the hardware. And then you get a total of 12 basically horizontal planks and all the cross beams that go with it, which are nicely wrapped up there. So in this case, we have 3 separate shelving units, so 1 long one per shelving unit. And basically each shelving unit has 4 levels: the bottom, the middle 2, and then the top, and all the associated cross beams. And so each one of those is in there, so there's 12 total of that. So let's get started on the assembly. I'm going to do this in time lapse and then maybe stop a few points in between to show you specific things and then wrap it up at the end. So let's get started. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so I got some of it unpacked, and I want to stop here to tell you a little bit more about how this thing works. First of all, it's really lightweight metal, not too heavy duty, and it's all basically stamped like this. So they've sort of made a fastener system out of this. So basically by punching a hole and bending the metal a little bit, as you can see here, it's a little bit hard to see because it's black. But basically, this piece, so this is a horizontal one, this is a vertical one. This horizontal one has a hole with this kind of notch cut into it, and you can basically do you can imagine already how it fits. So basically, this thing goes on the round one and then slides down, and it's actually pretty simple, basically like that, right? So if you do this on each corner, and then there's cross beams here as well, and all the shelves and whatnot, it gets to be pretty strong because it's one unit, and then there's a crisscross piece as well. So it's pretty simple, and that saves a lot of screwing and tightening as well. And also with the vertical pieces, you get this bag of fasteners, but it's actually more than just fasteners. So you have all kinds of different locking units. So this is used to, I think, tie it into the wall. And you get some pieces like this, which are for connecting multiple sets of shelves together. So basically 2 of those L brackets, one goes in here and one goes in there, so they're connected at all the corners. And you also get one of these. Can you guess what this is? So it's just a piece of plastic. This is actually for you to hammer on. So when you put those connector pieces, those horizontal connector pieces, you can put this on the metal through this little channel and then hit it with a hammer. So if you don't have a rubber mallet, you can use this without fear of totally trashing your thin metal rails. So basically it's just there as not really a spacer, but basically as like a force spreader. Protector, I guess. It's a bumper. And last but not least, there are a few screws and nuts, and then also an Allen wrench, of course, because it's IKEA. And these are basically only used to connect the cross beams. So yeah, that's basically it for this package. As far as IKEA goes, it's actually light on fasteners, so pretty good design, I guess. So I decided to skip a lot of the labor involved in getting started. As you can see, I have unpacked 11 of these shelving units, and I've saved the last one just to show you what's in each one. So there's no really good way of getting into these, so I just basically took a pair of scissors, cut it up, and you want to be careful. You want to be careful not to scratch anything, but basically just cut and yank. So as you can see, within each package, there's basically 1 shelf, 2 long connectors which go on the front and back side to horizontally connect, and then two stubby ones, which basically go sort of front to back on the sides for this particular level. Two of those, and then there's also one of these, and this one is basically similar except slightly different length. There's two of these and there's one of these, and as you can see, this one doesn't have the same circle with the square notch in it, because these basically go on the sides, and this one goes in the center, and that basically supports the load on that relatively thin shelf, but basically this keeps it strong and also keeps the shelf front to back from coming apart in the middle. Okay, so let's get back to assembly. Okay, so last but not least, this thing has kind of an X crossbeam thing, which is basically these super thin metal strips, and they lock together depending on what size shelf you have. We have the big one, so we'll do the end pieces, and it basically locks in place, kind of slides and locks in, and then you use one of the screws that comes in the package to connect these two together, something like that, and then you screw it into the holes in between, not at the shelf level, but sort of like that one, and across to that one, and across to that one, something like that. So yeah, basically just to make sure that it doesn't wobble, because right now it actually is super wobbly, as you can see. Because everything sort of fits together and there's no screws in there, it's actually pretty dangerous right now, so you definitely have to put these in. Since this is an X, they have to actually connect together in the center, and then you screw it in each corner. And don't forget to use the short screw. I guess they don't want it to like poke into the back of whatever you put on the shelf. So there's one screw that's slightly shorter. It is pretty short, so it's kind of a pain to get started, but once you get it going, then yeah, just screw it all in. Don't tighten it up until you have the corners on. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so here you can see first of the 3 shelving units in place. I'll do the other 2 in a second. But yeah, it's actually not so bad once you get the hang of it. So it's pretty lightweight, and I'm guessing it's pretty strong, but I have to say it is a bit wobbly, at least with only 1 shelving unit in here. You can actually already see it's actually not too bad once you put the crossbeams in side to side, but front to back it's actually pretty bad. In this case, I'm guessing that the floor is not exactly flat too, so those rubber feet help. But yeah, like I think you should definitely try screwing into the wall, because right now I'd be afraid, like if someone tried to pull on this or climb on it, it definitely would topple over. So once you put stuff on the bottom, obviously it'll be a lot better, but definitely consider screwing into the wall. Okay, so now you've seen me do it once. Let's watch me do it 2 more times in time lapse. Okay, so there's one piece I wanted to show a close-up of the assembly of because I think it's the trickiest single part in there. It's this cross beam which goes from the front to the back in the middle of the shelf to support. So it has this kind of tab which has to go into a small hole here on the bottom of the front and back piece and then tilt up and lock into place. And it gets pretty tricky, so let me try to explain the best way I found to do it while I demonstrate. So basically, first of all, you want to come in at an angle, get in because it's basically exactly the same width here. I found that on most of them, this distance is actually off a little bit, so you might have to push in or pull out to get everything to fit. But basically, put it in flat and try to get that tab into the two slots. So already this one I have to push back because the tab is too far forward because this thing is kind of bowed. So basically, get them both in and then push down so it kind of squeezes in. And then you want to tilt this thing up like this. And so now it's supposed to lock into place, but again, you might have to adjust the distance to get it to lock. Okay, so now I got the front one locked in and the back one I've got to kind of sort of twist it back and forth, and now it's locked in and you can feel it's pretty locked in. It's not going to fall down. So that gets a little bit tricky, but once you get it in, you can tell it's in. What I recommend you don't do is try to use a hammer and kind of force it in because it will actually bend this middle piece. There's a little tab on there, and I bent one and I had to use some pliers to try to bend it back, and I'm afraid that it's like obviously weaker than it was before I bent it. So try to just use your hand strength only and really adjust this, basically twist it or pull it in and out to get it into the right spot, and it should just kind of click in so it stays in, so you don't have to force it. Okay, so there you go. Assembly is complete. So what do I think? Actually, I have to say I'm not super impressed with this thing. I wasn't expecting it to be super awesome for the price. It's like $300 something for the 3 sections here. But I'm a little bit disappointed in the flimsiness of it. So I knew basically that it was this kind of interlocking pieces thing, but the problem is it doesn't actually lock. It's just all kind of friction and direction. So in other words, if I'm putting a weight on here, it's not going to come unlocked. But the problem is if I try to lift on it, for example, that's what happens, right? So the problem is that fundamentally everything is meant to counteract gravity, which means if you're trying to pick this thing up, for example, to move it, it just comes apart. So you got to be really careful. Also, that leaves a lot more places for things to come undone, etc., and makes things kind of flimsy. So as you can see, if you don't use the anchors that come with this thing, actually it doesn't even include the screws, just includes the anchor piece, you're basically taking a real chance here. I definitely would not use this in any kind of place where there's going to be kids, or if there's earthquakes, for example. So Hong Kong, luckily, is pretty stable. I'm guessing if you put a lot of heavy stuff on the bottom, it's less of a problem, but it's still pretty wobbly. So so that's not really good. The fact that you can't really lift it without it falling apart is not really good. The other issue is if you have multiple shelves together like this. So the instructions aren't super clear on how you should do it. But basically, the first one I did is a complete standalone, and then I had to connect the second one in and screw it together, trying to get it into that conjoining foot thing, which was kind of a pain to line up the screws. So the second one, I actually, as soon as I had finished this one, I basically screwed this one on at the same time before I put everything together, and that made it a little bit easier, but still not super easy. I actually had to kind of lift it in and out. So yeah, that's also another issue. I don't know if it's better to basically start on everything, all the vertical pieces at the same time, and then go in and do everything else, or what, but basically it's kind of a pain in the butt. So in conclusion, not super impressed. I don't know if I would buy this one again, or maybe look elsewhere. I've done the Hindo shelves, if you haven't seen that video. Those ones were also kind of flawed, but in a different way. These ones are definitely bigger. It probably will be less wobbly once you put stuff in it, and also, of course, I'm definitely going to go back in and tighten everything one more time before I start loading anything in there. So yeah, that's it for today. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Don't forget to subscribe, and definitely check out our other IKEA videos. I've done the Hindo, I've done Remberget, done all kinds of stuff. So definitely check those out, and maybe check out the rest of my channel as well. Okay, bye. Having the stroller with me all the time up in the overhead bin, as soon as we get off the plane, pull it out, unfold it, and walk off. Literally that could save you 15-20 minutes right there.